Hey everyone, Sycra here, and today I'm joined by Flavia
Hey.
and Bob Meatbag.
Hey.
So, very enthusiastic greetings.
Such is our way.
Are you happy to be here?
Oh yeah.
Oh. So, today I'm going to be drawing. How come I'm drawing, Bob?
Well, my tablet doesn't work. So, I
What
won't be able
happened
to.
to it?
I don't know. It's sort of like it started off where the stylus there was a lot of lag, and then the tip that I used for drawing just stopped working. So now I can't draw.
As a Polish say, stylus. Yeah. So you're just using your eraser to draw now?
No, I'm just using it to move things around. I can't even use it to draw.
Oh, I have tablet problems of my own. My screen is huge because I'm using an Intuos Pro large, and it's new, and I'm unfamiliar with it. Like it's very large. I had a Cintiq 22 HD, and for people who know, that kind of died, and then I had to get it repaired in Germany, but it's going to cost like 823 euro to get it repaired.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Jesus.
I know. And then I have because people say, why don't you use a Huion tablet and I have an Artisil tablet, and it's like, well,
clearly people who say that don't have a Huion tablet.
Yeah, it's not so simple. It's kind of like some of the tablets. It's better to just draw on paper than to use them. Is that good to say?
Yeah.
I feel bad because I said the Huion was okay, and then it's like it's fine until you have to use it.
Yeah.
Like a lot if you use it regularly, and then I don't know.
I guess it depends on the level you were at as well.
When I first started using it, I was just thinking I was comparing it to my Graphire when I started, and it was fine. It's like, yeah, okay, it can do what it needs to do, but I don't know, there's just driver issues. But at the same time, it's not like I'm super happy with Wacom either. I've heard Bob, you have your problem with your pen, and then I've heard other people with problems with like the Cintiq 13 HD, and there's a lot of tablet issues lately, and my most reliable one is my Intuos 3, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess things just break down eventually because I've had this tablet for a while.
Yeah. But I had my Intuos 3 for I don't know, a really long time. Tons of years. I don't know, I thought maybe we could talk about tablets a bit. How and I'm drawing, so if it sucks, that's why. And if you want me to take prompts, I'm probably not going to do a good job. That's a very negative stream.
Oh, jeez. Well, I was just gonna say that even though our tablets are broken, it's sort of like we're still drawing traditionally.
Yeah.
And it has made us focus more on just I don't know, because when you're drawing in Photoshop, it's sort of like you can correct every single mistake. So it's like, oh, I don't like that. I can just change it, and it's very easy. But with traditional, it sort of forces you into making decisions, and it's like, no, you're gonna have to commit to this.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, it's a bit more difficult, but it does make you a better artist. So I think that's sort of an advantage of traditional.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I feel I just prefer traditional for. And Flavia, you're using your companion a lot, right?
Yeah, I've been struggling with it. At first it was good, as in I'd switched to it from a Wacom bamboo medium, I think, and for years and years, I'd used the Bamboo as a mouse for gaming. And I'd gotten really good. Like, it was very, very comfortable for gaming. It was much more responsive. But the problem was that I formed this really bad habit. Like, I couldn't draw with it in pen mode. I could only draw with it in mouse mode because I wasn't used to making wide gestures or big motion things with my arm.
Yeah.
And then when I started using the companion, it was like, oh, okay, so I get to shake this super bad habit that I've gotten into. But then as time went on and I was actually trying to draw or paint or get things done with a companion, it just it lags the alignment of where you place your, like, no matter how many times I calibrated it, it didn't put the mark where I put the pen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that takes some getting used to. It's an adjustment.
I didn't like the companion either. But it's weird because, like, whenever these products come out, there's this, everybody talks about how great they are. But then you actually use it for a while. It's like, this has a lot of problems. Like, the companion for me is unusable because of how laggy it is. I can't work on a large scale with it.
Yeah.
It's almost unusable. I mean, I did use it.
Yeah, but you had to change your things a lot. Like, you couldn't do.
Yeah, I had to just keep holding Control Z. I had to put down marks, and then I like to draw, and this has very little lag when I'm using the Intuos, which is why I went back to Intuos.
Yeah. But you're also using a good computer with it because it's not.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It slows down a lot. So I don't know. It seems like the Apple Pencil is really good, but then again, with the Apple Pencil for the iPad Pro, I guess it's called, the thing with that seems to be just the programs. I need Photoshop.
Yeah.
That's what I use. So doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that one seems pretty good.
Yeah, it looks pretty fluid for sketching and stuff. But then you should still wait and see how it progresses. But with Apple things, it's like, okay. Well, I think Wacom's a bit complacent lately.
I think so. I think they're like, I don't really like how it seems a lot of the products are like, they're okay, and then they break, and it's like, why you're paying so much, $800 whatever for repairs? And my Cintiq was out of warranty, so at least it made it that far. At least it made it beyond warranty.
It made it beyond
warranty.
warranty.
The video board had an issue, and it was a problem with them.
And then the corner broke? Really?
It broke at their place, and that cost more to fix than everything else. And it's like, can't really say anything. I don't know.
But our old Wacom tools are fine. Because the Bamboo that I used is still, the pen broke, but the tablet still worked throughout.
I guess that's just, maybe it's the planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's kind of weird because, I'm talking a lot about tools, and often artists talk about, including me, how the tools aren't important. And it's like, yeah, it's not important in that you still need fundamentals, but if you have those, it kind of is important because it determines how you're going to work.
Or whether you're going to work. Like, if your tool is being unusable, or how the Cintiq was making your colors are all weird and stuff, you can't work.
Yeah,
it's just that simple.
I can't see colors anymore.
Yeah, and for me, it's just like when the stylus was becoming really laggy, it was just like, I can't use this to draw. It's just this annoyance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's that. And then I used Artisanal products, and those I just had a lot of driver issues. So they say they're going to fix it, and they're going to. So I'm holding off doing a review because they're working on making it a better product, and I hope that does happen. doing screaming faces for you meatbags. What else? Do we have? What are your experiences of tablets, and have you had any problems with products lately? Chad?
Teleperte asks if we've ever tried fixing our tools ourselves, and to that I say yes, I have taken apart the bamboo and the pen and put it back together and fixed the circuits inside. So there's that, and it worked. It's like, oh, okay, fine, this is usable once more. But I was really scared about doing that.
I'm just looking at the screaming face.
I don't know how to do them, Jeff and Bob.
No, I think you're doing fine.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, you tend to have like a different body shape, so let's put one of those. No.
It's kind of interesting how it's sort of like, just by adding that other element, it seems as though there's something going on between the two characters.
Yeah, like suddenly he's talking instead of just sitting.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't remember how you draw hands.
It doesn't matter. What are they talking about?
Please make the fingers the same.
Let me show you my magic finger.
Teleperte is doing animation tutorials for people who are interested. I watched one of them, and it was pretty cool. So, does anyone have stories?
Well, let's see. Glacy had a bamboo, and the cord was loose after 2 weeks, and after about a year and a half, it completely broke down. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Wacom at its finest. I don't know. I wasn't really happy about how the whole thing went, so now I'm kind of annoyed with Wacom.
Yeah, and Isaac Rondeau McNair had the touch on his Intuos Pro being really buggy, and then when it's plugged in, he can't turn it off. That's something.
Oh, but I have an Intuos Pro.
I guess it gets really depressing when you get into a habit of working a certain way, and then your things break, and then you have to scramble for finding a replacement and getting your things.
Yeah, especially when we keep running out of money because we have to fix stuff. Living in Romania.
Yeah. What will you choose? Drinkable water or fixing your Cintiq?
Fixing the Cintiq. Well, what do you mean? Because we haven't had drinkable water for a while, and then we still make do. You just go to the store and buy water. So it's fine.
Well, fine, then water that doesn't burn your hands.
Or a Cintiq?
Yeah.
Well, right now I have an Intuos, so I'm fine. No, I guess water that doesn't burn.
Yeah.
Man. Oh, that's just scary.
Is Wacom Bamboo Fun a bad model compared to the new ones?
I don't know. Never used it.
I haven't used the new ones, But the old bamboo font that I had, still have actually, was fine. There wasn't anything that I was missing with it. Admittedly, I wasn't doing professional work or anything, but that's what it is. It's a beginner thing. It was doing its job. It was sturdy. It took a lot of abuse.
Right.
It was good for gaming.
Oh, jeez.
I want to
I
know
used it
if
for
I should
gaming as well.
upgrade my Huion H610 to an Intuos Pro Large or Cintiq 13 HD or something else. Probably yes.
I would get the Intuos, but the problem with the Intuos is that it just takes a bit more time to get used to if you're not used to it. But
I would suggest doing an activity in which you don't have time to think about how the fact that you're not used to it. So like what I did was that I just went to I think it was it Pixel Lovely? But anyways, it was a figure drawing site, and then I just did a bunch of figure drawing, and then I put it on like 30 seconds or a minute and that kind of stuff, and so I'm just and because of the timer, it's sort of like, no, I don't have time to think about how I'm not used to this, so I just kept on doing that, and then eventually I just got used to it pretty quickly.
I think that's kind of how I did it too, but at the time it was Pros Maniacs. But yeah.
Oh boy.
Sorry, I'm not able to talk as much because this is what happens when I talk and draw. I can't do either well. So I apologize.
But you seem to be doing fine with Intuos still.
Yeah, I'm fine with Intuos things.
But it's still different than the one you had before, right?
Yeah, because it's really big. The Intuos Large is humongous, and it's kind of a bit tiring because you have to move your arm. If you want to make big strokes, you have to move your arm all over the place. But I like I configured my circle thing to rotate, so that's nice.
Whee!
It's kind of interesting how like the simple, like just by doing something simple, it creates character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and varying things, because like even if I wanted to make this guy more characteristic, I could just do this, and then like one of his eyes is like really buggy.
Yeah.
Rage caterpillar.
It's perspective.
Have you ever tried drawing on a Surface Pro?
No.
No.
I don't know. It's so many things are like I hear good things and then I try it and it doesn't really work for me. But I don't know if that's just because I'm used to something or because it really is a matter of it depends how you use this. Because even with the companion, it's okay in some ways.
In what ways would you say it's okay?
When I held it in my lap as I do my sketchbook and I drew, it was okay. When I painted, it was okay as well. When I was trying to draw too much like I normally draw, it was kind of hard.
But were you doing like speed paints or speed sketches?
Yeah,
the small ones.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. Because it seems like whenever it breaks down is when you put just a bit too much load on it in terms of file size and layer numbers and stuff like that.
Oh, now I remember how I hated the companion because I kept crashing Photoshop in it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, remember? I had to keep loading. I had to keep saving and just like put a mark down and then save, or it might at any point crash.
Yeah, for me it doesn't crash. I think I had one or two when I was doing the cat thing, but then that's it. Those crashes came at really bad times, as they usually do. Well, Bria Blood says the companion 2 improved a ton on the buggy features. Well, Bria, that is good to hear. I guess if you've had experience with both, that is good for you. I've only had the companion 1 to work with, and it's not quite. Like, it is helpful in the sense that it's portable. I would say that it's compact and it's portable, and that's about it. Like, the rest of it, it lags and it heats up and it's very loud. And then the more use you try to get out of it, the more it blocks you at about every turn. I think there are a lot of companies that are coming out with sort of like alternatives to Wacom, but because they don't have the manpower and they're not quite catching up. And they're only, I think we were talking about this, how their only selling point seems to be the price tag, not the quality.
Yeah. Like, the one good one is the Apple thing, but then again, it doesn't run Photoshop, so that's...
Yeah. This Wacom and Photoshop thing has become it's the industry standard, therefore we must have this, but it's a bit limiting. Okay, I think.
Any more questions?
No, there's a guy called Dave Bobbiter that says CDS, VSD, VSD, VSD. I think I managed to make him shut up a bit. When did you start digital art and how old are you now?
Wait, are you really quiet or is it just me?
No, I'm really quiet.
Why?
Because I was focusing on reading the chat. I guess when I talk and read at the same time, I get quiet.
Because I was like, is the world getting more quiet, or is it just my...
No.
Well...
Just me.
But, okay, so how old were we when we started using the digital stuff?
Yeah, how old are you now, and how old were you when you started drawing?
When I started drawing, that's different.
Let's see. When I started doing digital, I think I was 18 or so. I am 23 now. So yeah, I've been using digital for a while, but recently, of course, I've been doing more traditional. But even before, when I was before my tablet started going all funky, I was still doing more traditional.
I used it when I was 15 or 14, 14 maybe.
Yeah.
I think I got mine when I was 20, maybe 21.
And how old are you now?
30.
Yeah.
I'm 30. Here's a question. What do you think the balance should be between presentability and exploration in a sketchbook?
I think sketchbooks are for you, so it's like if you're working on presentation, then do that. But I don't know. I don't really like the whole, a sketchbook is to show everybody and it's supposed to be cool. I like the idea of it because it's like, yeah, I like seeing sketches too, but maybe have two sketchbooks, one that you could show people and one that is just, for exploration.
Yeah. Because a sketchbook is, like for me anyways, it's strictly about experimentation and practice.
Yeah.
I don't go in with the intention of thinking I'm going to show this to somebody, because if you do, then you're already setting yourself up for a different type of mindset. And it's interesting how when you're really working on something, even a simple change in mindset could really affect the outcome.
Yeah, I agree.
With your pointy chins thing, I liked seeing a lot of the behind the scenes things. Because I think like, oh, okay, maybe they're not exciting as in Bob will do 1,000 arms or you will do a bunch of like crickets and stuff. Like maybe it's not exciting in terms of it's the same subject matter, it's the same whatever. But I guess if you're an artist, you will look at a sketchbook differently.
Yeah. It's also I don't know, because there are times when it's like I'm looking back at my sketchbook, and then there's just like there's the really technical stuff, which is kind of boring to look at because it's like you're not really exploring anything in terms of your own interest. Nothing is really being expressed except for your exploration in terms of skills and what you can do. But it's like that's really sort of all part of it.
The express keys aren't functioning anymore. Should I do like talking? Do you want to draw it instead?
Me?
I don't know. It's very like I'm not able to really say much, and it seems very quick.
Are you rebranding pointy chins as pointy foreheads? You're just reversing them. Oh. Can art hurt you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very tough at times.
Like when you stick a pencil, you sharpen it a lot.
If you're not careful with erasing, the stuff can get in your lungs. You gotta go see a doctor for that.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna be pretty noisy if you don't feed him.
I just fed him before.
No,
What
I guess
comes
it's the
first,
picture.
the story or the picture?
I think it depends. For certain people, if you go in with the intention of creating a story, then it's sort of like, okay, of course that's going to be what's going to be coming first. But for me, sometimes when I draw, it's like, especially with the screaming faces, like when I just draw screaming faces, the story just sort of shows up by itself. And that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's like you're finding what you're drawing. And yeah, and it's sort of like, I'm still not exactly sure how that happens. But it's it's sort of like the discovery in and of itself creates the story sometimes.
Yeah. I think for most of my stuff, that's just spontaneous. It's just putting down stuff and seeing what happens. But of course, if it's for work or anything directed, then it has to be the story first. Usually.
Yeah. I think with I don't know. It's sort of like the spontaneous stuff at times can be really great, but it's just like there's a lack of consistency. So I suppose that's where your skills come in, you know. And so okay, well, you can't always find the really great stuff all the time. So the other times you have to use your skills. You have to practice. You have to develop your sense of an image. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
What artist would a cat be?
What artist would a cat be?
You would know that.
Well, it depends on what art would they produce or what personality they would have, because I think they would be kind of douchey. I think they would be very entitled as an artist. Yeah, I'm gonna take over this project now. Yeah, cater to me.
Very selfish.
Yeah, but.
Any other questions?
Do you believe there are all kinds of personalities in the art world, or do you think someone needs a certain kind of personality to enjoy doing art and to therefore become good at art?
I think that's true, that there are a lot of common personalities.
And usually the ones that are like usually the ones that are pretty successful, like they're pretty consistent in terms of like, okay, you gotta put in work, you gotta be professional, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's also like, do you have a passion for it or not? And how much do you like what you're doing? Because with art, it's kind of one of those things where it seems fun, so a lot of people want to do it just because well, I mean, in terms of work, if you told somebody, like, what do you do for your job? Well, I just draw stuff or I create worlds. That sounds so much cooler than, I wake up at 7 and then I get to work and then I stand at the booth or whatever I do. Like, whatever you do, art sounds pretty nice. But the thing is, I don't know, there's a lot of business in it.
Yeah.
And it seems as well that you need to be somewhat business-minded, which I am not.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds nice if you think about it as an outsider, not knowing, what's involved and stuff.
Yeah. I think it's that way for a lot of things. It's sort of like you're viewing, I don't know, because when you're not doing it, you're not dealing with all the shit that comes with it. So then you're only seeing sort of almost like an end result thing. And it's like, okay, that looks pretty cool. Oh, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, without not realizing, no, there's work involved.
Yeah, I think the benefits of, like, for different people, I think different benefits of different jobs would mean very different things. I know people who wouldn't last a lot in the artist environment. They wouldn't like the lack of routine, the lack of rigidity and stuff. But on the other hand, I guess if you put someone like, I don't know, like me, sent them to a lawyer's job, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I know when there's this idea of what art is, and then when people find out how much all-encompassing art is, they tend to get more. I don't know, like, okay, so I'll tell they'll say, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I draw, and then what else? Well, like draw or paint, or I watch videos or I look at other art. Like, it's just art, and then they're like, oh, that's it? Like, that's all you do? Like,
yeah, it seems like fun to them. Like, it's just...
Well, sometimes it seems like that, but then when you actually live it, it's like, oh, so it's art again. It's like, yeah, it's just art.
Yeah, it's
a lot of art.
It sort of becomes a lifestyle in a way. It's like everything revolves around it.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like on the same time, it's a type of expression and self-exploration, but at the same time, it's also skill. So then it's just like those three are pretty huge in terms of topics and how much it can encompass your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think self-exploration is not quite everybody's cup of tea. They did this experiment a few times. I've read a few different reports on it, where they would have people choose between spending 15 minutes entirely alone, doing nothing, no cell phone, no distractions, or taking a small electric shock. And most people chose the electric shock. When you're doing art, it's pretty much just being by yourself with your own problems, with your own shortcomings, with your own...
Yeah. And with art, it's sort of like when you're drawing, all the shortcomings are pretty visible. It's sort of like, oh, you put in one stroke, or you put in whatever line you're trying to express, whether it's an anatomy or its arm or it's just whatever, or you're just trying to find something to draw. It's sort of like all those failings appear right in front of your eyes every time. So it's just like it can get pretty discouraging at times.
Yeah.
There's something very personal about art that doesn't seem to be the same as some other jobs. Like I volunteered at a gallery before, and it was like taking out the trash and stuff, and I don't know, updating signs and just stuff with just menial tasks. And it was boring, but it wasn't hard. Whereas art really is difficult. I feel like it's been not now so much as it used to be. It's just very, very... It was difficult because everything you did was something creative, and like even getting revisions is very different than some other job where someone tells you like, oh yeah, don't stock the thing there, put it in this shelf, and it's like, oh okay. But if someone tells you like, oh, change this thing to this other thing, it's like it can be harder.
Yeah. I think with revisions, especially because if you get an idea and you think it's good, and you put it down, but then you're told that this idea isn't good, it's not just a mindless action. It's a specific decision and idea that you created that's unique to you. So that's why it's like at times it can be a bit more difficult to take. And with art, it's sort of, I don't know, it's just a lot more personal because you're using the thing, well, you're using your mind to create things. So then it's just like anything that you do is you, you know. So it's just like that takes a lot more. I don't know. It just takes a lot more than just doing a simple task.
As someone who decided to do art as a dedicated hobby instead of a career, am I wrong to feel frustrated with people who say they'll be a successful artist but put in no work whatsoever?
Well, I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
They're not going to be a successful artist, though.
Yeah, it's just them saying. I guess it really depends on how much things get to you. Because for me, when I hear somebody who says like, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and then I see them putting in no work, it's like, "Oh, sure, you can say this, but this is for yourself, in your own thing. You're just comforting yourself, I guess. I'm going to be a successful artist. I'm going to be." But are you really going to be a successful artist if you put in no work? No.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just enamored with the idea.
You're the type of person who hears other people say and voice and declare and stuff, and then that affects you because you take them seriously. Then I don't know. I suppose.
That kind of bothers me, but because so far I replied to pretty much all my emails. I've stopped replying to Facebook messages because it got too much, and I've stopped replying to. I can't check YouTube comments anymore because there's too many. But still email. I try to check, but it's kind of like I put an effort to talk to them, and then when you find out things like, they'll say, "Oh, I don't really have time for that," because I get a lot of, "Oh, can you, I want to be an artist. I don't really draw, but I want to be a concept artist and stuff. And what do you think? Do you think it's possible to make money with art?" And my answer is like, well, yeah, it's possible to make money, of course, but that's not the same as you can do it, because then I'll say, you have to do this, and how much time are you putting in? Oh, well, I don't really have time for drawing right now. Here's some work I did, 4 years ago or 3 years ago or something, and yeah, this is my old work, so it's not very good. And it's like, why are you talking to me? I can't give you anything. I can't help you. It's just discouraging.
But it's bad form anyway. If I was sending somebody my work for a review, I would try to make it relevant. Like, their review and what they tell me is going to be useless if if the work I'm sending isn't relevant.
Yeah.
Like if you're sending it's just like conducting a scientific experiment. So your purpose is to find out what their reaction is to your work. If you're giving them 2 drawings, that will not be enough to get a relevant conclusion. If you're sending them 100 drawings, but that are no longer, I don't know, current, you can do much better than. What are they going to say? Yeah, improve your anatomy, and then in the meantime, you have improved your anatomy, or you have grown out of bad habits, or you have developed bad habits. Like, how are they going to know this? How are they, and what use is this profile? Because I suppose a lot of people talk about their psychological profile and their motivations for doing things rather than the work they're sending.
Yeah.
I did this, and then I did this when I was 14, or then I did this when I was... Because I suppose what they want to know is, tell me that I've progressed. They want to be reassured.
Yeah. I think they want comfort more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, because it is quite lonely to be an artist. Like,
yeah.
Sure, you have this community thing, but you don't really have much of a, I don't know, companionship.
Yeah, because like I think about it, let's say you're doing music or something, then it's sort of like, well, I can imagine that's probably something, it could be more sociable. And it's sort of like, oh, and if you're doing music, it's happening right away. But with art, it seems to be like, no, you have to sort of go away and be a hermit for a little while and just really dedicate yourself to the work. It's like that kind of stuff takes time.
I think even in music, you end up suffering for this at some point or another.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking of more like celebrity type music people who end up being super lonely and super disconnected and stuff.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you were a manager or something, you still have a support network.
I
You
suppose.
look up to somebody, and then they tell you, "Oh, you're doing this right," or "Improve on this." Or...
I think a lot of people just aren't meant to be professional artists, but art is good anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I think art is a great tool. It's a great communication tool. It feels good to do it. It's sort of, I don't know, good for the soul, if you want to say that. It feels very right compared to some other things. It's the same as, for instance, when you train physically, it feels good. It's good for your body.
Yeah.
If you study, it's good for your mind. And art feels good for your soul somehow. Like I don't know, that's an abstract term, but...
I think it has something to do with the means of communication and how, I don't know, backwards our verbal communication and our honesty and our ideas and pleasure and stuff has become lately. Like the more your verbal communication lacks, the more you still have this huge need for socializing in one way or another. But I think art is much more direct than saying something and then worrying about outcomes and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's sort of, there's a lot that can go wrong with communication. There's a lot of ways things could be misinterpreted, and I know language at times can be a very clumsy thing. You know, a lot of times when I think about it, it's like there's not actually that many people who are really good with words and good at communicating. But with art, it's just, I don't know, it's very direct.
Yeah.
You know, there's
if I think about yourself, Bob, you had to switch languages, right?
In what way?
Like when you moved to Canada.
Yeah.
You basically had to learn a new language and learn to communicate in that way.
Yeah. Well, I was pretty young at the time, so, you know, it wasn't too difficult, but I do remember it's like that took some time.
Were you frustrated?
No, well, maybe I was. I'm not sure. I was pretty young at the time, so I don't know. I think kids can be pretty resilient.
Yeah. I think the advantage is like if you do a drawing of a dragon, everybody will see it as a dragon, no matter where they are in the world. So
yeah,
a wider net you're casting.
Yeah, I think with the visuals they're very they're very functional. You know, it's sort of like, okay, if you show something, it's like there's not a lot of things that can bog it down unless sort of, you know, you're not very good at communicating what a visual image is. Like if it's muddy or something, then of course it's gonna be hard to tell. But if you can get a clear image, sort of like the visuals can be pretty universal.
Yeah. I'm also thinking that the visual aspect of communication is much more hardwired into our primitive brain as well. If you think of the verbal development, that comes in much later than the visual.
Yeah.
What you're reaching is a more deep part of your audience.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question: what makes a character appealing?
So many things, but shapes are a big one. And what do you think, Bob?
What makes a character appealing? Well, the shapes can be appealing. The energy could be appealing. The character itself could be appealing. It's just, I don't know. It just depends on what you're playing with. If you say what could make a character appealing, anything could make a character appealing as long as you do it the right way. You know, I'm not sure if that's very clear.
Well, what do you mean when you say do it the right way? Like, what do you think about when you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to create this character and I want to do it right? What are you...
Well, all right. That's going to be a bit difficult to answer because it just happens so fast that it's hard to keep track of. But let's say for me, sometimes I go with a feeling. It's sort of like, oh, well, let's say I start off with with a hunched feeling, then it's sort of I draw my character kind of hunched, and then that already creates some sort of interest. You know, it's like I suppose if I analyze it, it's sort of like, okay, if they're hunched, then it can mean a number of things. They're tired, they're old, they're depressed, they're angry, and then that shape of in and of itself, that specific mood that I'm in gets expressed through the character, and that can become many different outcomes.
So you're suggesting a state.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it, I think. What state you're in, and then that gets expressed through the way you draw. What else? Yeah, I don't know. It's just if you create interesting shapes, then sometimes you also have to go in with the intention of what sort of shape you're going to use. You know, so if you use rounds, then it's sort of like that already sort of creates a type of character. It's like maybe somebody that's very chubby. It's like, oh, maybe they're cute, or maybe they're overweight, and then that creates that dynamic that you can work with. I think that's what it is. You know, these tools creates different dynamics with each other.
Yeah. And there's also like I don't know. For me, a lot of it feels like it goes back to shapes in different ways, like appealing motions, appealing physics, appealing. I don't know. I'm unable to think and draw.
Take your time.
Well, here's a question about what we were talking about earlier. How do you find out that you aren't meant to be an artist? Do you really have to go to a point where there is no way back?
No, I don't think so. Because the thing for me is, you could tell me, as people have, you can't do art. I won't. Stop.
Yeah.
You cannot convince me not to do art.
Yeah, if you're really into it, you will push through, I suppose.
I think what stops an artist from being an artist is, this is going to sound maybe a bit insensitive, but for instance, if you are the type of person that a teacher could tell you, you're not cut out to be an artist, and then you say, you know, I stopped drawing ever since a teacher told me you're not cut out to be an artist, it's like, they're probably right.
Yeah.
Because if you stopped, you're not cut out to be an artist. There's so much failure that you've got to overcome.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's not true completely.
I think there are cases, like if you're dealing with severe social vulnerability.
Yeah, I don't think it's nice to say to someone, oh, you're not going to become an artist. I think it's pretty arrogant. It's like, who are you to say that?
Yeah, I think that type of...
was referring to being a professional artist, more like just an artist.
Well, yeah, because I'm only talking about professional as well. I'm not talking about, like, anyone can be an artist in terms of just getting some skill.
Yeah. But I think even if you haven't had these sort of experiences, you should still do some soul searching and confront your own things. Like maybe, I don't know, do a journal type thing or write down your issues, your problems, your thoughts, because they will make more sense once they're on paper, once they're structured. Sort of like, I'm not saying like I'll go to therapy to find out if you're cut out to be an artist or not, but usually the problem is within yourself. Why do you even ask yourself this question? Like, I don't know, for most people I've seen, for most artists I've seen, this question sometimes arises, but most of the time it doesn't have any weight. It doesn't, like, the momentum you have towards doing art, I don't know, your drive to doing art is so strong that, oh yeah, maybe I should, yeah, but I'll do it anyway. And just passes I guess it could go into foolishness, but it's your life, it's your...
I think you gotta be a bit foolish.
Yeah, I think so. Because otherwise you won't take the risks that you need to take.
Yeah, you need that staying power to just sort of go through the entire process.
Yeah.
When you look at people who they have a choice to be an artist or not, they often end up not one. But if you look at the people who had no choice and that all they could do is art and all they put everything into it, it's like, well, they usually become fine. Like, they're successful usually.
It's kind of funny. It's like, I can't do anything but art, so I became an artist.
Well, yeah, but it's true because if you could do something other, then once you hit the really hard times,
it's just
hard to continue.
Yeah, it's just there's too much failure going on. Like the amount of times where it's just like I couldn't do something in art. It's so many, and you think it's like, oh, I can do some stuff in art, yeah, but there's a lot of stuff that you can't do, and you get confronted with that every day when you draw. So it's like if you had an option to do something else, then it's most likely, I think a lot of people would take it if they could.
Yeah, here's Jeans1515 who says, their grade 7 art teacher destroyed their love of art. Took years to regrow my love of drawing. I don't know. I've been in sort of a similar position where my, I guess mine stopped in grade 7, but my gymnasium art teacher was terrible. I would say he was a terrible person. He was drunk in class. He was hitting students.
Only in Romania.
Only in Romania.
Not only in Romania, I suppose.
I suppose in China they would do that too. But he was just hitting us and giving us assignments that were meant to keep us occupied, not teach us anything.
Yeah.
And I really associated this with bad things, like, oh, drawing class was horrible, was something that I wanted to avoid, was something that, oh, I would rather skip drawing and go to other students' programming class or something like that.
Yeah.
And then when he resigned, finally, I felt free. Oh, I can do this without thinking about him. I can do this without considering that it's a chore. But it never really came to the point of I don't love art anymore because of this guy. It just felt crippling to have to do it in school because of the context.
Yeah, well, I think
it really raises some questions about what is your drive really towards, what is your biggest pull? Is it the social thing? Is it finding a mentor who will accept you? Like, what do you want out of art? Because there are so many things, like it caters to so many needs of so many different people. Which one are you? Do you want to be admired? Do you want to be known or understood or seen? Or what's your payoff?
Yeah.
Somebody asks, what's the point of a portfolio review?
Well, if you want to get into a company, you would go for a review to the people who are giving that company, who work in that company, and they can tell you, like, is your work fit for the work they do?
Yeah, it's basically the portfolio is your qualification. It's like you don't have a diploma or anything. It's just what can you do? How good can you do it?
They have people to tell you, like, if you're good enough or if you're not good enough and what you need to work on, and because it can be hard to know, am I good enough? Well, according to whom? If it's just like, well, my mom says I'm good, it's like, well...
Your mom's paying your wages, then sure. But I think it's also important for seeing the people you would be working with. Like if you go to a portfolio review by a professional who's already working in the industry, you sort of get a feel for the type of person you are going to encounter. Like, are you going to be ready for that? Can you even communicate with them? Are they too harsh for you? Can you stand criticism? Because I think this is a big part, right?
Yeah.
Are you socially viable in this environment? Because I think they look for types. They look for a certain profile of artists.
Yeah, they usually want somebody who's easy to work with socially. So it's just, you can do the job. Can you get along with everybody else? I think those are the two requirements. Although I think at times the how well you can work with somebody takes precedence. I think I've heard that advice before. It's sort of like how well can you work with others? Because in a studio, that's what you're going to be. You're working with others.
Yeah. It makes sense if you think about it from their business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like once you stop seeing it as so much. Oh, this is personal, this is art, this is expression, this is creativity. It's like, no, you're thinking about these people as managers and directors, and it's like, what do you want? Do you want somebody who can do the job right, but is going to disrupt everyone else? Or do you want somebody who can maybe, I don't know, be a bit rusty or less gifted in the talent part or the skill part?
Yeah.
But who will be a motivator for the others? Are they going to be all chipper and?
Yeah. And once when that qualification is met with the social aspect, anyways, that's when the skills come in. It's sort of like, it's like, okay, well, how well can you do the job? And it comes. I think there's less personal expression in it. So it's
It comes down to that 3 thing that you can have 2 of 3 things. You can be good, you can be nice, and
cheap.
yeah.
There were different diagrams for that, but yeah.
Well, there's one for commissions. It's either going to be fast, cheap, or it's going to be well done, and you can choose 2 of them.
Yeah.
And then with hiring someone, they're going to be skilled, they're going to be nice, as in they get along with everybody, or they're going to meet deadlines. So you can be nice and skilled, and then if you don't meet deadlines, it's okay. You can be nice and you meet deadlines, and you don't have to be that good, or you can meet deadlines and good, and then you don't have to be that nice.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people who start out, and for myself included, portfolio reviews are pretty good for figuring out if you, like, where do you fit in? Because I didn't know where I wanted. Like when we met, I was like, I want to be a concept artist. Yeah, I'm gonna just do this, and because that's all I was exposed to predominantly, to either fine art but in a gallery environment, which I did not quite fit into. I don't fit in with a talk more, paint less type. And then everything I knew about people who were into skill or making things that are pleasant primarily visually was concept art, because this is what the new thing is, apparently. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do concept art. And I went into this information gathering thing, and I did get a portfolio review from a book publishing agency. And it's like, I don't quite fit in with these people. I don't quite, this seems a bit more than just lack of experience. It seems to not be the type of environment that I should work in.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes putting your job title first is not necessarily the best in terms of, oh, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to do concept art. It's like, if you were going into science, you might not choose, like, well, I'm going to be a botanist right away, like, unless you really like it. See, the thing is, if you know what you like, then get good at that, and then you'll probably find someone who'll want you for that. And other things you can't account for everything. For instance, okay, there's, I don't know how many people, maybe like 12 people watching right now, and it's like, well, cool, I've got 12 people watching my YouTube stream, but in 2005, I didn't know, even 2006 when I started the channel, I was like, I didn't know this is going to be a thing. I was just doing it not for fun, because it wasn't fun, but for education, because I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
But it's like you don't know what can become a thing. There wasn't Patreon a while back, and it's like, well, that can help. There wasn't Kickstarter. So it's like you really don't know what's going to be out there in terms of these things. So when you say, well, I'm going to work for this company, it's like, well, is that company even going to be around? You don't know that. But what was my point? But you do know your skill. Like, if your skill is there, and if you enjoy what you do, then it doesn't matter. You're going to find people who like that too, because you're a person. So chances are, if you like something, someone else is going to like it, especially if you're part of the global community thing. And this is something I wanted to talk about. This whole, people will say, well, I'm from here, whatever country they're from or whatever place, and so can I make it? Or I can't make it here. It's like, I don't get, I live in Romania. I don't get paid by Romanians. I get paid by people, well, if a Romanian commissions me, sure, but I'm not making money from Romania. I'm making money from the internet. It doesn't matter where I am. I go to a fancy art school because there's enough. I went to an animation school, but anyway, there's enough information online, and I don't know.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Teleporte. He's asking a lot of good questions. What is the most important psychological trait that a person should have to improve in art?
What is the most important psychological trait? I don't know. There are a few, I think. One is, I don't know, just enjoying doing art. I think that's like people who really seem to enjoy doing their own thing. It's like they seem to go pretty far. What else? Perseverance, I suppose. It's like knowing, like you have to go through a lot of failure. What else? I don't know. Critical thinking. I think that's also a pretty good trait to have. Just because, like you can't just mindlessly do something. You have to think about it as well. Even though the doing is a huge part of it. But if you don't have both the will to do things and also the ability to think about things, then sort of like you're kind of at a pretty big disadvantage. Because I think I've seen both ends of it. It's like there are people who really, like, they might really think about it, but then it's like they don't do anything. And then it's like, well, you're not going to get very far. And there are people who do a lot of art, but then they don't really think about, like, oh, well, why do they like to do art? What would they like to do? That kind of stuff. And they're also not going to get that far as well, I think. Yeah, no, those are the ones that I can think of at the top of my head.
Yeah. I don't know, I think it takes a lot of strength, a lot of stability of character, a lot of commitment, because it won't be easy. Like, no matter what's thrown at you, like, and it could be just brute mileage, or it could be, I don't know, adopting a style if you want to work in a studio or something, or it could be, I don't know, keeping your mouth shut if you're a really, I don't know, disagreeable character, or if you really don't like the people you work with, but you want to do this job for what it gives you, you really need to be determined and have the strength to put up with whatever it throws at you.
I suppose then in that case adaptability is pretty important as well. It's like how well can you adapt to the situation and overcome it.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like that three thing, you can have one of three traits. I think that's really a case of figure out, you can do it with almost any build, You could be the type of person who is super social, and it's like, okay, so in video game terms, you're what, a bard? You can raise charisma, you can convince people to do things, you could be the type of person who's super aloof, and it's like, I'm the assassin. I get the job done. I don't talk much. It's very dependent on figuring out who you are and what abilities you have, finding the right place for yourself, and then utilizing all your strengths. But you could be a lot of different things. Like, sure, yeah, you need to be determined. I was told, for instance, that I kept hearing this, and I don't think it's untrue, but that you need to be passionate. And for me, it's like, well, I wasn't that passionate as a person. I didn't feel like I was a super passionate person. I felt like I want to be good, sure, but it wasn't out of like, oh, I really love doing this. It was more like, no, I want to be good at something. but I don't really see a point to anything. I had a heavy depression, so it's like, well, I didn't feel good about things, so I actively tried to remember when I did feel good. And it's like, well, I did art and I liked it when I was a kid, and I had kept doing art, but it was more a case of like, at some point, I just had to fake it. I had to keep doing it because it's like, I committed to this, let me do it anyway. And then once the depression goes away or subsides, you have your skill. So I didn't survive at first through passion. It was more through, well, I needed to. I just needed to do this, and I convinced myself. So then you could say you gave up your passion for just willpower. You just used extreme willpower, and then after it's like, well, I've gotten to a stage where I'm not super depressed anymore. But I'm not happy with where I am, and then I realized, well, I'm not doing what I like, and that's when I switched to passion. Oh yeah, there are things I like. And what are these things? And find those, and it's like, okay, now I can do a different build.
Well, it seems like all these things hinge on self-awareness. Like a lot of what we've been talking about today is like, well, be self-aware, be self-aware, be self-aware.
Yeah, I think, I know, like a lot of things are just psychological, especially with art, since it's so much dependent on just what you prefer. So it's just like that aspect of it does need to be explored, right?
Yeah. And sadly, this aspect of it's sort of like with the business side of art. Everybody teaches in school. I mean, they teach the academic stuff, but they don't talk about the business side of things until recently they started introducing it. And nobody really talks, that I've seen, about the psychological aspects of doing art. Oh, you go in and you know how to draw a hand, but you don't invest that much into knowing why you're drawing in the first place or what are you getting out of it, and you end up, if you're going to school, you end up graduating with no idea of what to do next. And that's quite dangerous.
I wonder if it's just because with art, a lot of it is just focused on the doing of it. It's like, oh, you have to get the mileage, and then it's like, I don't know. It's like, especially when you're in a school environment, it's just like, oh, you need to do these assignments. You know, you just got to do it, and then that sort of puts them more into. It doesn't really give you time to think about things, I suppose. Maybe that's one of the advantages of just sort of like doing art on your own. It's sort of like you might not get as much mileage because you're trying to force yourself to do it, but it does give you time to sort of think about, so, well, why am I doing this thing?
I do wonder about the direction in which that goes, though, because you say it's more like, oh, you're focusing on the mileage, but you are coming at this with an experience of doing art on your own. It's more, the way I see it, it's more like, no, art in school is sort of, let's focus on this mileage and this technique thing, because we are not equipped to deal with the whys, and we are not equipped to confronting ourselves. And I've seen a lot of people in art university, at least, I don't know, in a few countries, they go to school just to delay the start of their life. I'm still in school. I'm still in school. I don't have to deal with this. I don't have to deal with reality. And then when they graduate, it's like, why don't I just stay in school? Why don't I look for this other program?
Yeah.
An eternal student. Never grow up.
Yeah. I think because it's sort of like that type of environment, just sort of like, one, the people there are just sort of focused on, so especially with art, it's, well, you're here for art, we're going to teach you the technique. You know, and then when you're in there, it's also like, well, you know, I just have to focus on the technique. Because I remember when I finished VFS, it was this feeling of sort of like, because I don't know, I didn't really enjoy art at that time as well. So it's just like, well, as long as I'm in school, then I don't have time to think about, you know, what comes after. It's like, no, I just have to learn the technique. And then afterwards, it's just sort of like, oh, I don't even know what I'm going to do now.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
It feels like whenever you're focusing on technique, it's more in your control.
Yeah.
It's not a huge thing that you have to deal with. You don't have to deal with, I don't know, monumental issues.
Yeah. Because with technique, I think is, I don't know, you're in a very specific mindset. It's like there's a specific goal you're trying to go after.
Is that us on the stream?
Just what was it talking about? I'm sorry, your image distracted me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It looks good. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
Oh yeah, technique. When you're I don't know, when you're doing technique, you're after a very specific goal. It's like I want to be able to do this specific action or this specific thing, and then it just sort of narrows your mind into doing it.
Yeah.
And then you're not really focused on anything else, which is like once again, it's sort of like okay, if you want to get better at something, then yeah, that's great. But the bigger picture is sort of confronting what is it you like, why are you doing something, where do you want to go, etc. etc.
But it seems to feel more like progress when you're actually, I don't know, you're looking at your drawings and you're looking at your drawings from a year before, and it's palpable progress. You can show it to somebody and see, now I know how to draw butts better than I did before, and now my figures aren't so stiff, or I don't know, my compositions are more appealing. Like you can actually prove that you've done something. Whereas if you say, yeah, but compared to last year, at least now I know where I'm going, that just sort of makes you sound like you've been doing nothing. It's not credited with as much weight as it is.
You mean like, oh, just instead of like doing something, it's just more thinking. It's like, oh, I'm going to think about what I'm going to do.
Yeah, make sure that your foundations are solid. And I don't know, there's always this thing of when you talk about foundations in art, you talk about values, you talk about proportion, you talk about this, but it's also what are your foundations as an artist?
All right. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. Because it's, I suppose the thing of concentrating too much on technique is just it's a very short-sighted goal. I've noticed this. It's like you're doing this thing to specifically get this one thing, and that's it. But I don't know. I suppose just like thinking about just yourself as a person. That's there's more to it, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, there's a question from a while back. I'm getting involved more seriously in caricature, but I find it really hard to exaggerate enough. Any tips?
Keep at it. I think it's one of those things where you're not going to be good right away. It's a ton of mileage that really gets you this, perhaps more than you would, hope for. But yeah.
Yeah. I've hurt my wrist because of drawing and had to stop drawing. That has made me very depressed. I basically can't do anything without it hurting. For example, writing this, I'm doing exercises. Any advice?
Take time off. I would really give your body a chance to heal. I think it takes in some cases, 6 months or more of just not using that, doing exercises. I would not try to, push through it physically, just draw anyway. Don't do that because you'll really screw yourself up.
Yeah. If your hands are your main thing for doing art, so if you fuck that up, you're screwed. Any other questions?
I'm scrolling. What do you think about art part-time with a backup plan?
What?
We've talked about this before, I think.
Yeah. Part-time art with a backup plan. It's none of these are absolute. So when you ask us questions, we're not going to be able to give you the truth because there is no such thing. But from my experience, it's hard because it's difficult to not fall back on your backup, really. It's very tempting to feel like, well, okay, let's just go to the backup instead of sticking with it. And a lot of art involves sticking with it. So.
Yeah, you won't get as much of a feel of urgency when you know you have a backup plan.
Yeah.
You won't push yourself because you'll feel like, oh, this is the threshold at which I should give up and settle for plan B because this isn't realistic. And, I don't know, I think sometimes your assessment is skewed.
Yeah, I suppose if you are going to go through that route, though, you're going to have to be pretty self-aware of what your goal is. You know, it's like, what is your goal? I want to become an artist. And then, you know, I have this other thing, that, you know, supplementing my income right now. That's all that it is. You know, you have to keep that goal in mind.
I study animation in college. Sometimes I put off work for later because I'm afraid I will keep erasing it and doing it again and never be happy with it. Do you have any advice?
I would spend all yesterday doing that.
I don't know. That seems to be, I don't know. That seems to be pretty common. It's just sort of like you're going to encounter that. You might never be. I don't know. It's this thing. It's just like I remember even looking back on my own stuff. It's like because of your intent on creating something, because of this idea you have in your head, you're not going to be able to enjoy what you're going to create. And it isn't until like maybe a year or more so later when you look back at this stuff. It's like you're not focusing on the intent anymore. You're just looking at the art for what it is, and it's sort of like, oh, well, this isn't too bad, and that's when you're able to enjoy it. But in the meantime, it's sort of like it can be, I don't know, it can be frustrating, I suppose.
And it stays as well. Like sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse.
Yeah.
A lot of what people are afraid of is that they don't, like, this isn't normal to go through this or not to go through this, but it's usually normal to go through these ups and downs. The thing is that you have to make sure you're constant. Well, again, I'm trying to stay away from absolutes, but try to, or damn disclaimers. It's often important to make sure you're consistently putting in work, and that's, or time, because even when you say work, it makes it sound as if it's super horrible. It's not. It shouldn't be that terrible.
Yeah. Mrs. Sycra taking over Sycra. Oh no, I've talked too much.
Nah, this works much better when Bob draws. Because I can't draw and talk, as you can see.
Well, neither can I. It's sort of like when I talk, I usually have to stop drawing. So.
Is Art University worth it in Romania? They focus a lot on traditional art when it comes to graphic art.
Yeah, this is also a common question.
Yeah.
Is this worth it? Is that worth it?
Yeah. In Romania, I have quite a number of, I don't know, acquaintances and friends in Art University, and I work in an art gallery part-time. So the type of people you will see, like in teachers and students and then in your field, you have to be very aware of your prospects if you're going to pursue this. Like, why are you going to art school? Why are you going to a physical art school, and what will that give you, if anything, above what you can get online?
Yeah.
Like, what is your profile? If you are looking for an into the gallery world, then yeah, sure, it's good to go. It's kind of like the same with any art school, I suppose. Like, go in there for the networking, but prepare to do a lot of work on your own. I know a bunch of teachers from, granted, I don't know much about outside of Bucharest, but in Bucharest there are many art teachers in university who will ask you to draw and paint like them. And the workshops that I've been to, I've attended a few of their classes, they are just, you have a picture, just photo reference, but basically done traditional. You copy a picture, you print it out, and you magnify it, and then you draw that. And that can actually be your degree work. So what is this giving you that you can't do on your own? Do you need an environment? Do you need connections? Do you need I don't know, social network? What is your, or do you just want a space? Because this is quite frequent. Like if you want a space, yes, art school will provide you with a workshop or I don't know, room for your canvases if you want to work big and stuff like that. They will give you some materials, I think.
I think it depends on what you want. A lot of people, they look at art. They might look at art on DrawCrowd or one of these things, and they're like, oh yeah, am I going to learn this in school? No. Like, chances are no.
Yeah, definitely.
Just look at reality. Look at people you admire and look up their stories. So there's a lot of illustrators who are very good and didn't go to art school. There's not a lot of industrial designers who are very good and didn't go to art school. It's up to you to, decide, because there are good art schools. Like Art Center has a lot of good art students who come out of there. But like for animation, if you're in France or you go to Gobelin, it's like, well, this school has a reputation. Whereas if you just go to a school that's like, I don't know, Made Up Town Art Institute of Made Up Town, and it's like, well, what do they have? And people that promise a lot, but they don't have much in terms of history, it's like you don't really know. For me, everything I'm doing, I could learn online, or I have learned online. So it's a case of like, why are you even? What is the real question you're asking? Are you wondering if someone's going to help you get to a place? I mentioned this before in one of either a stream or a video. It was this idea of taking personal responsibility, and a lot of people would rather go to a school than learn online, not because the school can help them more, but because if they fail, it's kind of the school's fault. And if they work online, it's their fault. And I don't know, it seems to be, this is something I've noticed, but at the same time, it's probably hard to admit to yourself if you are one of these people. I guess it's just, well, analyze yourself. Are you one of these people or not? And if you are, I don't know. You still can be a person with bad habits and bad ideas and get out of it, because I've had that.
But I think, I don't know, there's a lot to be said about writing it down. Like, you don't have to show it to anybody, but have the courage to write it down and face your own thoughts as if somebody else was saying them to you. Do they make sense? What are your motivations? What are your actual habits? What are your goals? I don't think enough people do this.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think enough people have good practices to help them. Like, there's no need to. It's just paper. It's just pen and paper, and you can throw it away afterwards if you're really that uncomfortable with it. Nobody has to know. Here was a question. I have this thing that every time that I'm drawing, I start to think that someone will see it, and that makes me really uncomfortable. I don't think that I'm free to draw. How to get over it?
Are you drawing around people? Because you don't have to.
Yeah. Or are you showing it to people? Don't.
Yeah. You could just, I don't know, I suppose you could just go with the idea of like, this is the sketchbook that I'm using or whatever it is that I'm drawing. It's like, it's specifically for yourself and you will never show it anybody, and you could just do that.
I had an experience of this yesterday where people were looking at my sketchbook and it's like, oh yeah, this is what it's like to go outside.
I suppose if they're in a school, that would make sense. If you're going to classes and you're drawing and stuff.
Maybe it's also something about not getting too precious with it. Like, I don't know, if you're doing it at a school, I would imagine that at some point you have to get to the point where it's like, I'm just another student, I'm going to suck, this is okay.
Yeah, just
people are going to see my work, whatever.
get an immunity.
Yeah, whatever, it's not a big deal. But I don't know.
But this is also a psychological issue that you have to deal with, not necessarily as an artist, but you would need to deal with this no matter what field you worked in. what is this to me? What does this fear mean? What does this fear imply?
Today I learned if you put happy faces on things, they become things. Nothing, and then you put a happy face on it. It's like, oh, it's something.
Well, that's the thing with the human brain, isn't it? It's sort of like if you identify it as a human emotion, then it's sort of like that's what it becomes, even if it's just a smiley face.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to do soul searching? How do we actually find out what we want to do and what we like doing?
I would say ask yourself what you liked when you were younger, when you were a kid and you weren't bogged down by all these things before you even knew what, good technique and good proportions and all that was. What did you like then? And this can change, It's not saying, oh, never grow beyond what you were as a kid, but it is an insight into what kind of things you liked. For myself, I had a lot of fun doing caricature, and I didn't want to be a caricaturist. I still don't really want to be a caricature artist. But I remember when I was young, I would do this, like draw pictures of the teachers and stuff, and just, I don't know, funny pictures. So it's like, well, it was there already. I feel there's this expression, God, it's a phrase like, show me a child at 7 and I'll show you the man, or something like that. And basically what it means is we're basically who we are by the time we're 7. We're not that different. And so you can really trace back a lot of what you are to your earlier years and then use that as a guide to what you actually like.
What about you, Bob? How do you do soul searching?
I don't know. I'm pretty bad at it.
Because you don't have a soul?
I got no soul. I got nothing inside.
Nothing inside. That's not true.
Maybe nothing. I don't know. It's just because sometimes I get bogged down with like what I think I'm going for, and or I don't know. It's like I could feel one way one day and another thing another day. So it's very confusing. But basically, what I do is just try to find it's what I enjoy doing. It's like, oh, do I enjoy drawing screaming faces? And so, yeah, okay, I seem to enjoy that. So I use that as sort of a compass. Do I enjoy drawing?
Do you remember when you started drawing screaming faces?
Oh God, I don't know. I must have been pretty young when I started drawing screaming faces because I can't remember a specific point when I started. I just know that it's just like I was drawing screaming faces for a very long time.
Yeah, I'm trying to prove my theory about, because I'm thinking about even the stuff I'm doing right now, where I enjoy it, and it's like, did I draw that when I was young? It's like, yeah, pretty much. If not that, similar things, like similar themes.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it is a pretty good starting point just to see like what you were doing when you were young. Because I suppose it's exactly as you say. It's just like there's nothing weighing you down, like no preconceived notions of like, oh, what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
What are your suggestions about conveying your emotions through your art? I have sudden bursts of extremely clear emotion, so how is the best way to convey it in your art?
What is the best way? I don't know. I don't know if there is a best way. Like for me, when I feel as though there's something I want to express, I just try doing it, and then a lot of times I fail. Like I can remember numerous times in the past where it's sort of like I was trying to convey something with my art, and it's just like I wasn't able to do it. So I don't know. Maybe sometimes it's like your technique might be lacking, so you cannot properly express what it is that you're trying to do. Other times it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very sad. I feel like that's what happens a lot when you're young and you have things to say. You can't say them because you don't have the skill. And then when you have the skill, it's like, I don't remember what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's sort of an inevitability because it's
Unless you're
Yeah.
a prodigy and you've got like the skill when you're still young. That's something,
Well,
I suppose.
I think what happens is that maybe just because like there's that whole intention thing again. One of the things is that let's say you're not worried about your skill and you just draw whatever it is that you're trying to express. You're going to get some sort of expression, but it just might not fit in with what you envision it. Because I've created work where it's just sort of like, because I was looking through it and some other people were looking at it as well, and they're saying like, oh, this feels like it's expressing something. And then it's just like, okay, so I did achieve something, but it's just that I didn't achieve what I wanted to. You know, and I think you're going to encounter that a lot. It's just that, huh? Oh, I see. Oh, I see what happened. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like it'll get better later on. The more practice you get, it'll be easier, and then you'll always have like more ideas later on.
Yeah.
If you think of it compared to speech, it's like when you're a baby, you have no access to language, and yet you still convey your emotions. Like, oh yeah, well, I'm crying, therefore I'm in distress, or I don't know, whatever babies say. But you don't need to be. I don't know, you don't need to have perfect diction or pronunciation or something to get your point across. Sometimes it's not necessary. You end up getting too distracted by form and you forget about, oh, there's a function underneath this.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing to think about, because like I said before, sometimes your technique might be lacking. Technique can sometimes get in the way, because what I've noticed recently is just sort of like, yeah, I've been getting better, but sometimes I just draw these dopey little images that have no skill whatsoever, and yet it's one, it conveys more emotion, and two, it's more fun in a way. Like with the images that's on screen right now, it's like those two characters. It's like they don't really take that much skill. It's just like, okay, have some awareness of shape language, and that's it. But they still have so much that's being conveyed through the emotions.
Yeah. Imagine if a baby wasn't screaming because it was focusing on learning language properly.
Yeah.
It would just starve.
Yeah. So it's just a spectrum, I suppose. So sometimes it could be technique, sometimes it could be too much technique.
Yeah, and it's a lot of like, what do you want to do? Because I think sometimes, and I know I fell into this, it becomes this search for skill for almost for the sake of skill. Like, I need more skill, I need more skill, I need more skill, instead of skill for the sake of whatever it is you want to achieve. Like, do you? And I've mentioned this before. You know, do you need this? If all you want to do is paint flowers, do you need to learn human anatomy? And I don't think you do. And I've had people who tell me like, oh, you're telling them not to learn this, but that's important, and they need to learn this. And it's like, it's not. That's not the reality of things. You know, it's people need the skill they need, and they don't need extra. And whether you like, if I wanted to paint like a old master, sure, I need a ton of skill. But if I just wanted to do like a Simon's cat type thing, it's like I don't need that level of skill.
Yeah, you did a video on the skills you need for each type of.
Yeah.
I think one thing that people get obsessed about. One thing that people get obsessed with skill is that it's just like they think it's like it solves all the problems that they're having with their art.
Yeah.
And then it's this is sort of like the nail and hammer thing.
Yeah.
That's what it can become. But to be fair, it's like, of course, if you have a lot of skill, it gives you a lot of range. It gives you a lot of options. But once again, it's all about mindset. It's like, okay, well, what are you using this technique for?
Mind you, there's a lot of people who don't, especially, I guess it's common with people who are middle-tier artists or even, laymen or whatever. They don't know what actual skill is. And what I've seen is for instance, you have people who draw in a way that it looks hard. Those aren't the most skilled artists. The ones that are the most skilled, the masters, make it look easy. So often people will look at a picture and it looks easy, and they're like, well, yeah, okay, so that's good. And then they'll look at someone else drawing, and it's like, wow, that looks really hard. It's like, oh, so that guy's good because, you know, his looks hard, and that's hard to do, and he's doing something hard. Whereas really it's like, no, and the same is true for, you look at oil paintings with tons of rendering, and then you might look at a simple watercolor where everything's as it should be in its right place. And they'll look at the oil painting and they'll see all the rendering like, wow, that took so much skill. Not like this watercolor, that's just a sketch. It's like the watercolor, well, depending, like you look at a Sargent watercolor, it takes much more skill than some of the oil paintings. There's more room to fix mistakes. There's a lot going on. So a lot of people, and I get annoyed by this, and it's I shouldn't, but I get annoyed when people say, oh, this is this and that's that, and this person's good and that person's not, and it's like when they don't really know what they're talking about because they don't even know what good is. They don't know what the levels of skill are. Like, there are things you are not even seeing.
Yeah. And
it's fine if it's personal taste. If they said, oh, it's my taste that this person's good, like, oh, okay, that's fine. But if it's like, no, this person's much better than that person, it's like, how do you know?
Yeah.
And I got this a lot from certain people who were like, oh, yeah, you're not good and this person's good. And it's like, at first I believed it, but then I got to the point where it's like, no, I'm better than this person. It's like, oh, yeah, that person. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, never mind. I shouldn't have gotten upset in the first place.
Yeah.
You get this as well when you go to like art galleries or auctions and stuff, and they will have different price ranges for different media used in a painting or a drawing. Like, oh, drawings go for much, much less than an oil painting. Like a crappy oil painting will sell for more than a very, very good watercolor.
Yeah. I think they get the priorities wrong, I think. It's sort of like, just because this is an oil painting, it's better. It's just like, what are you talking about?
I don't know if they get their priorities wrong so much as they're uneducated, really. They are, because the profile of people I've seen who do this and who set these prices and who set these, I don't know, thresholds for how much this should go for, and however, they don't really have much culture in terms of what does this showcase, what skill does this showcase, what thought process does this showcase. They will look at it kind of like selling it for square meter of painting or for weight, like, oh, how heavy is a canvas compared to a piece of paper? Oh, it's heavier, therefore it must be more expensive. Or you used buckets of paint to do this, therefore they will not really, because they don't know about, I don't know, oh, this artist had this thought process and this artist just mechanically copied a flower pot.
Well, with fine arts, I mean, they've been exposed when they had, I forget what it was, there was a show and it had just kid drawings and then they put them in an abstract thing, and then it was like, oh, this one's definitely done by a trained artist because they had like people test to see and they got it wrong.
Just exposing it is enough. Because it outlines a problem, but it doesn't really give much of a solution to it. Like, oh, sure, you can laugh at them and you can, but you're not quite giving them an out.
That would be pretty, I mean, it seems as though with abstract art, all they're relying on is subjectivity. It's just pure subjective. So then it's like, and because of that, they just sort of use that as like a barrier to like sort of block all criticism. And then you could, no matter how objective you can try to be with them, it's just sort of like, well, no, it's this thing, it's this thing, it's this thing. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it seems pretty difficult to try to really teach somebody. It's like, no, you don't understand. You can't just be pure subjective. Because if you do that, there's no point to anything anymore.
If it's so difficult, I think you can improve it for them. Like, I think you could make it better in the sense of understanding. Maybe not 100%, but 60%. It's better than 10%. Oh yeah, this has paint on it, therefore.
Okay.
It's kind of like if you were selling somebody a house And I think we were talking about it, and you came up with this analogy. Like you're selling somebody a house, and first of all, you're taking them to a house that's got really nice finishings and a thick coat of paint on it and super glossy and whatever. But incidentally, the house is in Romania, and the plumbing sucks, and the neighbors are super weird and shady and stuff, and there's nothing, no transportation close by and stuff, and like, oh yeah, but they'll look at the paint and yeah, this is super luxurious, and they'll be like wowed because it's so spectacular, and then you'll take them to this super bare bones house that doesn't look like much, but it is a lot. It has super good plumbing, it has very nice water, it's in a very good environment and stuff, and so yeah, this doesn't impress us as much.
This is what we've become.
What?
Talking about houses and plumbing. Other people would talk about like, oh, you know, there's this car or something. I don't know. It's like, drinking water, yeah, you know.
Well, it's like, oh, an Indian, a Romanian, and a Chinese person walk into a bar. Glass of tap water.
Oh God. Oh, well, that's what happens when you need basic necessities, right?
Yeah.
How are we for time? Are we almost over?
I think we're past.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to talk about this one thing. That's,
Okay.
I guess it's brief.
Okay.
How do you tell someone no when they ask you to do work for them that's outside your interest as an artist? Like, how do you say no without being rude?
There's ways of doing this. Like, for instance, you don't have to, I don't think you ever have to be rude, but it's like, you know, I would love to do that. I really wish I could do that, but it's outside of my expertise. I've had to do this sometimes, and like, there's a time where a guy wanted me to do some logo design, and I'm like, well, I'm really flattered that you would consider me, and I'm glad you like my work that much that you would want to reach out to me, but I'm really not experienced in this particular field, and I know I wouldn't do that good of a job, and I don't want to, you know, I won't feel good about doing that unless I'm going to be giving you, you know, my best, or even if I could do it, it's like, you know, I'm really grateful for the offer, but I'm not passionate about this subject, and because of that, I really wouldn't be able to do a very good job. But you know, maybe you know someone who could do it. Oh, you know, maybe you could seek out this person because they're really good at this, and that's their thing. So I don't think you have to be rude.
Yeah, I think a good strategy is think about it as if you're friend zoning them. But this really isn't like so you have this person and you don't want to let them down and you don't want to crush their dreams and hopes and their life, I don't know, their whatever ideas they might have for a happy future, and you want to let them down gently, and you don't need to be an ass to them. It's like there is no, maybe there's something with what you're perceiving as.
I don't know, just thinking of all the different situations.
Maybe there's something, because you're asking this, maybe there is something in you that is afraid of how you'll be perceived. Because if you're looking for just a text template, what Sycra said is perfectly fine. But then why are you even afraid of this? Like, why are you afraid of seeming rude just because you are refusing? Again, that's something that might connect to your personal history, that might connect to the people who've been around you and have taught you habits. And you really have to wonder why you're reacting like you're reacting.
Maybe you have psychological problems.
Yeah.
Oh, ho, ho, ho.
All right, is that it? Are we done?
I think so.
I think so.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Sorry, this is what happens when I draw. I can't talk as much, but thanks Flavia and Bob for keeping the audience engaged.
I don't know about that.
Thanks everyone for joining me for another monthly SycraStream, and these streams are made possible by the good people over at Patreon who, through their support, are bringing me to you. So thanks very much to all the patrons. And thanks for watching.